Hello and welcome. So I would love to know who from the audience lives in diaspora. Raise your hands in the chat because this panel is for you. Diaspora activism can be impactful, but transnational repression can ban, silence, and punish those who engage in the fight for rights from afar. And the Palestinian diaspora, raised of trauma, is a powerful tool in our struggle for liberation. How do we think about designing for unity when we are spread all over the world? And more topics will be discussed in this panel with the moderator Amy Sha'lan, the co-director at Makan, the Palestinian-led organization that works to transform the mainstream narrative on Palestine to one that upholds freedom, justice, and equality for all. She's also chair of the British Palestinian Committee and a policy member of Al-Shabaka. Amy holds a doctorate in the politics of Palestinian literature and has taught at City University and Queen Mary University of London. So, hello, Amy. Okay. Hi, Amy. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you.
I will leave it to you to introduce your speakers.
Thank you, Salsabil, and welcome to everybody that's joining us here today. Thank you for joining us for this session on diaspora activism. We've got a great panel lined up, and we're going to be discussing the Palestinian diaspora and the different ways that we can contribute to the struggle for liberation from our different locations, contexts, and even language. So I'm sorry I'm speaking in English. My Arabic isn't good enough, so many apologies for that. But we're going to be touching on the history of diaspora activism, what ties us together despite our diverse experiences, how we can stay connected to our homeland and communities in Palestine, as well as some of the challenges that we face in designing for unity as activists who are spread across the world. So please, just in case you need interpretation, just follow the instructions in the chat. The discussion will be for about 45 minutes, and we're going to dedicate the last 10 minutes to Q&A from the audience. So just send us your questions to the chat, and also do introduce yourselves in the chat too, and maybe even say a word or idea that comes to mind in relation to the theme of diaspora activism for this panel. So I'm delighted to be moderating such a wonderful panel of speakers located in different areas of the world. We have with us Nada Elia, a diaspora feminist and academic, Palestinian who was born in Iraq and lived for some time in the UK and is currently based in the US. Diana Kaus, a Palestinian activist based in Peru who works in the fields of politics and education. And also Saleh Hijazi, a human rights activist who was previously head of the Jerusalem office at Amnesty International, co-authoring their report on apartheid, and who is currently focused on Palestine Global South Solidarity. So my first question is really geared towards setting our discussion in a historical context. So in your view, how do you think political activism amongst Palestinian diaspora and the ways of mobilizing or advocating for support has changed over time? And I'm going to come first to you, Nada.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize I'd go first. Well, thank you for having me. This is, it's exciting to be speaking on this panel. Speaking as someone who is based in Turtle Island in the US and who's been organizing for decades, I can absolutely say I've seen a very significant change from the days when basically we were educating about our very existence, because it was the days of, you know, a land without the slogan was a land without a people for a people without a land. And we even had to explain that the Palestinian people exist and have been wronged. Those were back in the days, to today when basically we are actually explaining what action can be taken. And that's a huge difference. It used to be that we would talk about Palestine and people would ask, well, what can we do? And our answer would be educate others. And I'm an educator, you're an educator, so many of us are educators. It's like education alone is absolutely not enough. It's a first step. You need to know that there's a problem before you think of addressing it, but education alone is not enough. So now at the end of a talk that we give, or at an end of conversations or whatever, when people say, what can we do, we can actually give them concrete suggestions. Boycott, talk to your representatives, stop this legislation, and so on. So for me, that's a huge difference from, again, we exist, we have been wrong, to these are the actions we can take. That's a very, very significant difference. Another significant difference is that, we are actually, despite all the censorship, despite all of the harassment, we actually speak for ourselves. I mean, I'm remembering, again, if you want a historical overview, when Yasser Arafat died, there were 6 op-eds in the New York Times about him, and not one of them was by a Palestinian. Today, it would be unthinkable, unacceptable to actually speak for the Palestinians without the Palestinians speaking for ourselves. So that's another difference. Yet another difference is joint struggle. I mean, it used to be that we were in solidarity, and in solidarity means I support your cause. Today, it's not so much solidarity as much as it is joint struggle. We are in joint struggle. We are indigenous peoples, we are immigrants, we are refugees, we are criminalized communities, and we are in joint struggle rather than in solidarity with other indigenous people, immigrants, refugees, and criminalized communities. So there, I see a huge difference. We still have a long ways to go, but we have made so much more progress. It's, I'm very hopeful.
Thank you, Nada. Diana, I wonder how much that chimes with your experience about how activism has changed where you are based in Peru.
First of all, I'm gonna thank you. I'm gonna thank all the people that are making this real, that connect us between us and to the people that are listening now, and give us the opportunity to talk about Palestine. Well, I am a third generation Palestinian. I was born here in Lima, Peru, but my grandfather was born in Bethlehem. So on this type, I am a third generation Palestinian woman. I still connected to my land, to our land. So for this question, I think that now I'm gonna focus in the present, because with social media and with globalization, we can see that we are more connected about what is happening right now in Palestine. I can open social medias, I can open Instagram, and I can see how Palestinians that have my age are living right now there. So I can transfer and I can give all this material to young people, to people around the world that can understand and can see the truth. So I think that social media, it's having a good and important and an important place in this, right? So also this gives us more connection between communities here. So we are more connected. And also another thing that is very important right now is that we have, for example, here, I'm gonna talk about Latin America. We have in the diaspora members of the diaspora that are in important places, or that have important roles and positions in our governments, for example, and that make us the opportunity to be more involved in the politics here. For example, in the case of Peru, we have a vice president that an ex-vice president that he's Palestinian. We have a political people involved in the local government, ministers. So I think that this make the difference right now. So thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Diana. Yeah, I think Peru is a very different case to say Britain or the States at present. Saleh, what's your sort of view about the way in which activism has changed over the years?
So, I mean, my 2 cents here is that diaspora and exile have always, and hopefully shall always remain, at the heart of our, you want to call it kind of revolution or movement of towards liberation, or Palestinian political activism, perhaps more generally. And that is until we fulfill the right to return. So, we can consider ourselves to be a revolution of refugees against settler colonialism. That is what is at heart. And there's always been this very significant weight that is carried by political activism outside of Palestine. First through the armed struggle of the PLO, and perhaps here is where I see kind of the most significant change. And particularly because now the armed struggle or whatever remains of it is squarely within Palestine. So that's a very radical, significant shift that has happened in the 80s. And now we see nonviolent struggle being an important part of kind of the movement. Most importantly, I would say, boycott, divestment, and sanction movement, BDS. And the strategic impact of BDS is because of the political mobilization of the diaspora. But I would have, perhaps like a more pessimistic view here in saying have extremely kind of worrying challenges. And I know we're coming to this, but but it relates to kind of the shift. And one is, the disorientation of the strategic objective of our movement or of our revolution. Which particularly after the Oslo agreements between the PLO and Israel have shifted radically and have disoriented people, right? And we can come and speak about that later, and the difference between kind of how people are seeing that. So we must recalibrate towards, again, the right of return and the decolonization of Palestine. I think another thing, which now currently in my current work, I'm learning more and more about and experiencing, is that we've lost linkages with other struggles around the world, struggles for freedom and justice around the world. And that solidarity, perhaps from my kind of viewpoint here, is either no longer there or is much, much weaker than it used to be before. And so perhaps these are kind of too negative to add to the positives from Nada and Diana that I can contribute. Thanks.
Thank you, Saleh. I mean, I think in particular, Oslo has had such an impact on the way in which diaspora activism has taken place in recent years. But I think there is definitely a revival in terms of reconnecting with those different social justice movements and with reframing the whole situation as an anti-colonial struggle. But I think, the challenges of that, perhaps we could move on to now. And I'm going to come to you first, Diana. What new challenges exist do you think, in sustaining our activism in the face of exile over generations and also through protracted violence and fragmentation, and particularly where you're based?
Okay, so starting with the last phrase that you say, here in Latin America, as you said, we are a different case. Why? Because we are a very integrated diaspora here. So we have, we preserve our Palestinian identity thanks to our families, of course. And I think that it's important to, in each family, talk about Palestine, preserve traditions, continue with the activists. So, but like this, of course, we're going to stay connected to Palestine. But I am Palestinian, I am half Palestinian, but I am half Peruvian too. and I have my mentality is also from Latin America. So first, I think that we are not facing any case of exclusion here in Latin America, but I'm gonna be sincere. I'm gonna to all the Palestinians outside Palestine, and I'm going to say that you don't have to let anybody or nobody to tell you who you are. If you don't speak Arabic, you still being Palestinian. If you don't have a passport or you don't have a Hawiyya, you still being Palestinian. If you were born outside Palestine, it doesn't matter because you still being Palestinian. So this is the first thing. So people from the diaspora need to understand this. People from the diaspora need to understand that it doesn't matter if people make you feel that talk about Palestine is gonna be dangerous for you because it's gonna make you problems for your future, for example, because it's a reality. If you give your face to talk about Palestine, sometimes people are afraid to do that because they don't want problems with anybody, and talk about Palestine is a problem right now because you are giving your face to a big monster, you know, a cause that is a big cause and an important cause for the war. So also is a little bit difficult for the distance because here in Latin America, people from here, they don't know much about Palestine because it's so far, because you see in the news things that are not true, and you are the other side that is working a lot to make them see that they have the good part of the story, you know. So if you were born, for example, in Bolivia or Ecuador or Lima or Chile, and you are not Palestinian, maybe you see the news and you don't really understand what is going on there. So for us, it's really difficult to make them understand what is going on and what is the truth, you know. But I understand that too, because if I ask someone inside Palestine, okay, give me or tell me 10 things about Peru. Okay, maybe you're going to tell me, oh, Machu Picchu, Incas. So it's the same, you know. So that's why we need to understand this. Another thing that I would like to add is like, I think that it's everything. Yes, we need to reinforce. We need to stay connected. That we need to work to talk more about Palestine. Yes.
Thank you, Diana. And I mean, I think the thing around distance is such a huge issue. I mean, even just like having time zones, which is difficult to kind of connect with as well. Saleh, I wonder, I mean, you touched a little bit on challenges, but I'm sure you have lots more that you'd like to say around this.
Yeah, I can say a little bit. So I guess like there are the external and the internal ones, and perhaps here speaking among family, that we speak about the internal ones. Because I mean, when it comes to the external, it's quite clear. I mean, we are still facing a monstrous colonial regime that is relentlessly trying to fragment us, kill us. You know, just today there were at least 2 Palestinians who were dead, killed in the north of the West Bank. Similar, yes. Anyways, but in terms of the internal, and I think it's important kind of to be also honest with ourselves. And this is from my kind of, again, point of view from Palestine. And that is the kind of the self-inflicted division, I would call it, and really a corrupt political class that we have here. And these two are kind of a toxic combination that compound then these external challenges that we're having to kind of face continuously. And these inflicted kind of the self-inflicted divisions are not only kind of the big one that dominates the media is that between kind of the two ruling political parties, those in Gaza and those in the West Bank, but I think it's kind of even more than that. We're touching on some of these here. It's the PLO, non-PLO, it's the inside Palestine, outside of Palestine. It's on this side of the wall or that side of the wall. It is on this side of the green line or that side of the green line. It is the diaspora plus or the Palestinians inside. And I think, here is kind of the main challenge is that finding, and I believe Edward Said spoke about this at one point in his book, After the Last Sky. He mentioned something about kind of Palestinians having two languages, one with which they speak to kind of the outside world, and another one that they speak to themselves, among themselves. And I think we're missing that right now, or perhaps it's missing from large portions, or let's say kind of sectors. This can be kind of detrimental, right? And we've seen recently, for example, at least some of the things that I've been following is, this I would say absurd kind of like attacks that are taking place between groups who believe that the armed struggle is the only way to kind of liberate Palestine, and others who believe that, there's non-violent struggle that can liberate, as if these two things are also contradictory, or there's always this, in Palestine, we say kind of the logic of takhween. It's a making of a collaborator, right? That it's very easy for somebody to be kind of classified as being a collaborator with the Zionist regime or the imperialism with colonial forces. It's been like that for so many years. I'm not saying it's something new, but it's certainly a challenge now that it's high time that we overcome this, and we kind of return this very strong internal language that we're able to speak to each other across the fragments, across the borders, and go basically back to the path we were on towards return and decolonization.
Thank you, Salah. I think you've raised so many important issues for us, particularly around internal language and the sort of infighting that is happening amongst us all. Nada, I wonder from the States, what challenges, in addition to all the ones we've just been talking about, you would like to speak to?
I mean, I actually really want to uplift what Saleh has just said. It's so important that we remain united because of beyond attempt, the intention to fragment us. And so we should not allow fragmentation to happen. But I'm going to speak as a diaspora Palestinian in the US. And for those of us in the US, I mean, we are a tiny minority in the belly of the beast, in the brain of the monster. I sometimes think that the brain of the monster is a better image than the belly of the beast, although we're both the belly of the beast and the brain of the monster, because it takes both. We face censorship, we face harassment, we face intimidation, we face lawfare being, warfare in the forms of legal suits. We're constantly being sued for things we say. We face the loss of our livelihood. So many people cannot get a job because of their activism. People get fired from their jobs because of being outspoken. We face challenges, immense challenges, and I don't want to compare as much as just speak about our own circumstances. And I would never minimize those challenges. It's something we think of all the time. I'm a professor, and I have students who tell me, if I sign this petition, will I be able to go to Palestine this summer? I plan on going to Palestine. I haven't seen my family in a while. So, I mean, like, signing a petition, we're scared that it has consequences, and it does have consequences. At the same time, even though I would never minimize the challenges, I also don't want to minimize the commitment I see all around me. In the face of exile over generations, in the face of protracted violence, we're seeing yet one more generation. We're not forgetting. I mean, you know, David Ben-Gurion's, of all the wrong things that have been said about us, possibly the most wrong is David Ben-Gurion's prediction that the old will die and the young will forget. The young are not forgetting. We are seeing a young generation that is just as committed to return to liberation as the 1948 generation. I mean, because we are being wronged, we are still wronged today. Al-Nakba was not in 1948, it is ongoing. And when you are wronged, you cannot adjust to injustice. I mean, it's simply impossible. The Palestinian people is not exceptional in refusing injustice. There is no people throughout history that has adjusted to injustice. And so we are rising up against injustice to this day. And again, as I don't want to minimize the challenges, I can talk a lot about the challenges, but I think all of us are aware of the challenges. What I want to uplift is the leadership of the young people who are still to this day undaunted by the challenges, not naively, in full knowledge of the challenges, who are still organizing, still being activists, still dreaming of freedom, because when you're not free, you can only dream of freedom and work towards that. So yes, challenges, but also, yes, very much, we haven't given up. We will not give up. We do want return, liberation, and we're organizing to achieve that.
Thank you, Nada, and I absolutely agree. I think one great kind of hopeful thing is the younger generation who are so articulate, eloquent, and refuse to be cowed by the threats that they're coming under, which is really inspiring to see.
Yeah.
As somebody a bit older in the movement, you get a bit tired, and then suddenly there's this new generation that comes through and revives.
And it's not out of naivete, it's not out of ignorance of the challenges. They are fully aware of the challenges, and yet there's, like, you know, the sumud is also here. I mean, it's time we give. I wish we didn't have to constantly be in a mode of sumud, but sumud sustains us.
Absolutely. And before we come to hopefully some questions from the audience as well, so don't forget to put questions into the chat if you would like to ask some. I just have a question really, which is touching on something, Saleh, that you were talking to before, about how we can really best navigate the tension between mobilizing inside and outside of Palestine. So if you could start with that, that would be great.
So the way I see it is that this tension can be perhaps on kind of it comes on 4 points. Well, there could be more, but from my point of view, kind of the most important is that of kind of legitimacy. That's one. Leadership is another one. Sacrifice and expectations. So like basically legitimacy is, always the question: is there is there a movement or an initiative or a mobilization that is legitimate if it does not emanate from within Palestine, for example? I think these questions can be, they're good to ask. It's important to have these, kind of free dialogue sometimes among people, but sometimes it becomes detrimental, right? That, we say that there can be no mobilization that is legitimate without any link, at least, to Palestinians who are inside of Palestine. And I think that's wrong, right? Because very important, I think, this year, we're following the Unity Intifada of last year, where it was very clear, going to what Nada was saying, and you, Amy, about kind of the younger generation coming out, without any kind of leadership, on their own, really putting up front what is important, our dignity, our unity, unity of a people, and the unity of a land as well, right? These divisions do not. And we are 14 million. Palestinians are 14 million, right? So it's not the 7 million who are here. It's not the 5 million who are in the occupied territories. We are 14 million. And so but the 14 million are split between 7 that is outside and 7 that are inside. And there's this dialectic or dialogue that is kind of quite unique and needed. And so the other one is leadership. Can there be a leadership without Palestinians who are inside of Palestine? Sometimes, you have conversations, we're here about certain initiatives, for example, and we ask, can there be leadership without, for example, representation from the refugee camps, without representation from other places of exile and diaspora? Sacrifice, I think this is a ridiculous kind of like thing. Who is sacrificing more? How much do sacrifices carry then in terms of, and again, links to legitimacy? And finally, kind of the expectations. What do the inside expect from the people who are outside of Palestine and vice versa? I go back to kind of the issue of this language, being able to come back to kind of a language that we're able to speak with ourselves, among ourselves, that maintains the unity and maintains the clarity of our shared identity and objective right here. And to go back to kind of like, then the second part of your question, Amy, is like, what are the, you can call them the key ingredients, is really the kind of getting over this self-imposed division, ensuring that there is unity. Language can help that. An ideological basis as well is very important here, that we go back the recalibration of the compass towards return and liberation from colonialism, right? And finally, and I think this is perhaps again kind of going back to some of the things that came in the previous questions, is an organizing or an organization that is fluid, that is is an organization of the day. I want to call it like that, but that is a home to all, and that I can accommodate our diversity. And you can see here, even on this very small panel, kind of the diversity that we have among all 4 of us Palestinians, and we can add to it those brothers and sisters who are in the audience. And so like we need that, and we could do that, and it's absolutely crucial going forward.
Thank you, Salah. Yeah, I mean, absolutely. It's both a challenge and it's our strength, I think. Nada, I wonder if you could speak a little bit about the kind of tensions. I mean, you've been located in lots of different areas. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the tensions around mobilizing inside and outside of Palestine.
I think what Saleh has just is just so good. I want to talk about coordination, because yes, we're aware of the tensions and we've addressed the tensions, but I think talking about coordination is more empowering, and there is coordination too. I mean, I don't want to minimize the tension, but I'm someone who's thinking positively, silver lining or whatever. For example, the call for BDS. The call for BDS was issued mostly from within historic Palestine. I mean, I realize that some of the BNC and some of the initial signatories are not necessarily within historic Palestine, but it was primarily within historic Palestine. Many members of the BNC are within historic Palestine, but those of us who are actually engaging in boycott are diaspora Palestinians. And so that's coordination despite the tension. Another thing is, for example, I'm a member of the PFC, the Palestinian Feminist Collective, which was launched in primarily North America, US and Canada in 2021. And we think of ourselves as sisters to Talat, the grassroots feminist collective in Palestine. Again, this is a collaboration. This is a sisterhood. Of course, there are tensions. Of course, we have different circumstances. Absolutely, yes. Do we have different challenges? Absolutely, yes. But we do have the same goal. We have the same aspirations. Our goal, our aspirations are social and political liberation. So what we can do in the diaspora is amplify the aspiration, as PFC, speaking as the PFC, as the Palestinian Feminist Collective. What we do in the diaspora is we actually amplify the aspirations of our sisters in the homeland, but these are also our own aspirations. So I see a united goal, I see a united aspiration, and for me, yes, the tensions are there. I would not minimize them, but I also see that there is coordination. I mean, again, the BDS call is being enacted by the diaspora. Talaat's call is a call that we embrace, that is also our call, social and political liberation. So there's a lot of coordination going on at the grassroots level. I totally agree that at the leadership level, we don't have enough of that. We need a lot more of that. The 14 million who are the entire Palestinian people, there's a lot going on at the grassroots level that's very, coordinated, sometimes organically coordinated, because we do have the same aspirations. The leadership, oh my gosh. I mean, but then again, we're doing so much without the leadership. Eventually, hopefully, it will rise up. It's not trickling down, that's for sure.
Thank you. I think absolutely one of the things, and I think just in the past few years as well, strangely, COVID has had a part to play in terms of making us connect across boundaries a lot more as well. I think definitely that kind of coordination, not just with Palestinians in Palestine, but also with other social justice movements. I think that sort of opened up those connections more and built on the momentum that came out of the Unity Intifada as well. It's kind of a real mix of things that kind of have come together there. Diana, I wonder if you would like to speak a little bit about also kind of coordinating in the face of those sort of tensions of inside and outside too.
Yes, of course, about coordinating. Here in Peru, we are 50,000 of Palestinians. In Chile, we are a half of millions of Palestinians. In Honduras, we have 250,000 Palestinians. And in Brazil, we have 100,000 of Palestinians. So we are a lot of Palestinians in all the world. Leaders in our communities. We need new faces. We need young people. We need new ideas. Because maybe, not only in this case, but when we are doing things in one way and we don't see any difference, maybe we should think about change our way to do things. So it's important to think about this. This is the only thing that I want to add to all the interesting things that Saleh and Nada actually said. So open path to new people, new faces, new ideas.
Thank you. I can't see any questions that have come at the side here. So if there aren't any questions in the chat, then I'm going to ask a broader question. But if you want to ask one, please do put one in the chat, and they will get passed through to us. I suppose you touched a little bit on it, Saleh, around the kind of key ingredients for a unified activism when we're spread around the world. And we've touched a bit on hope as well in terms of kind of what people might be excited about going forward. Diana, I'm going to start with you about what you think is most exciting or what you feel kind of can really unify us going forward, and how you think things will work out in the future in terms of designing for unity as diaspora activists.
Yes, of course. So I want to say 4 things. First of all, remember that we are all Palestinians. Second, we have to learn and we have to see the way to take advantage of our diaspora around the world. we have important people, important Palestinians outside Palestine too, and inside, of course. That, but the difference of the Palestinians outside is that we know our governments too. I can understand how people think here in Latin America. I can understand how my government here think. So this is important to focus, because maybe we can see things that other cannot, and we can understand things that other cannot. So we have to take advantage of this. Number 3, we have to remember to stay in contact, and we have to, the unity is very important too, and coordination, as everybody said. And finally, as I just said 1 minute ago, open path to young people, new faces, new ideas.
Thank you, Diana.
Thank you.
Nada.
Yeah, so when we speak of 14 million Palestinians, yes, we are 14 million people, and we have different circumstances. So we are spread all over the world, and our goal is the same, and that goal is freedom for all 14 million Palestinians. And by that, I want to emphasize social and political freedom, which means not only sovereignty as a people, but also sovereignty as individuals in all our diversity. We are women, we are queer, we are young, we are old, we are hijabi, we are secular, and all of these Palestinians have to have social and political freedom. I think it's really important for us as a Palestinian people to not make the mistakes of other struggles that put national liberation first. And when you put national liberation first, that's all you can achieve. You want to achieve social and political liberation at the same time. So, I mean, as Talat says, and I said, Palestinian Feminist Collective, Talat, there can be no national liberation without social and political liberation. We are in a struggle for full freedom for 14 million people, and those 14 million people are not all older straight guys. Let's keep that in mind. So this is, if we want to be unified, we need to be unified in the goal of freedom and liberation, social and political liberation for every one of those 14 million Palestinians. Whatever our circumstances are, whatever our identities are, we do have different identities. We're not 14 million of the same individual. And I think that's something that we need to keep in mind at all times.
Thank you. A couple of questions have come in from the audience. One of them is, what do you say to people who say that the work or protests we do in the diaspora won't do much and that liberation will only come from within? I'm going to ask Saleh that first, as somebody who's speaking to us from Palestine now.
Liberation will come from within and without, and I wouldn't say at all underestimate the importance of mobilizing on the streets in wherever you are, the person who asked the question. I think what is important, what I always say about these protests and kind of the mobilization is that they do pick up when we see a lot of bloodshed. Right, and there is a lot of bloodshed, unfortunately. I mean, so like you see this mass movement following, a genocidal attack on Gaza, for example, or but particularly Gaza, right? So we've seen that last year around the May and June onslaught. We've seen that in 2014. We've seen that in 2008, 2009. These were perhaps kind of the largest mobilizations that we've seen around the world in solidarity with the Palestinians. I mean, the one last year was quite, I think, particularly inspirational because of also the Unity and Dignity Intifada that was taking place also at home. I think where things can really make a much larger impact if it's sustained, if the mobilization, the education, the pressure is strategic. And again, I mean, we go to a lot of the points that we discussed here during this session about kind of the unity and organizing body that is a home and all embracing of our diversity of this kind of shared language. but we need to be able to move even when there is not this massive bloodshed, because we are facing an incremental genocide, and the way it is that, you know, you have massive violence that is sometimes not spectacular. I mean, look at what's happening in the West Bank right now, is that we're having the largest loss of life, many of whom are children, since 2005. 2005 was still an intifada year, right? And but it is not, you know, it does not have the spectacle of the bomb on a house with family members in it, right? It's kind of slower. It comes at kind of an incremental stage, and the media is not paying attention, nor doesn't want to pay attention. So I see Salsabil coming here, so I'm gonna. Hi, Salsabil.
Hi, Saleh.
So I would say,
You can wrap
I would
up.
think the protests are not effective. Yes, thank you.
We will just to very quickly thank everybody. I'm sorry we didn't get to the questions that came through. They didn't quite come through in time to us, but there were some great questions that were asked. I'm sorry. Hopefully we'll be able to continue the conversation. From my part, I think in terms of hope for the future, this kind of summit that Build Palestine is doing in terms of connecting us, it's been great to meet all the panelists, and I very much hope we will continue to remain connected. But I think it's so important that this kind of activity is going on, because I think it is the way in which we coordinate for the future.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Saleh. Thank you, Diana. And thank you, Nada. Thank you all.
Thank you all. Great to be with you.
Yes, it's great to be with you too. So now we will introduce you to our last fellow, Hamza Ghoshi, the founder of Naviatics, an insurance tech startup that saves lives. Watch the video about Naviatics and check out their booth in the expo area to connect with Hamza. See you after the break to talk about civil engagement.